Welcome to the Life, Love, Everything podcast. I'm your host, Tasmin Bota. I know that as the parent of a premature child, I am always thinking about what the future will look like for my preemie. There is so much information available on premature babies, right? But hardly any on life after. But premature babies become toddlers, begin school, become teens, and of course, eventually adults. The medical literature says that premature babies catch up to their full term counterparts by 2 years old. But the truth of the matter is, you cannot recover from being born premature. I have witnessed this firsthand. On today's episode, we get a glimpse of what the future looks like for our premature children, how the journey looks all the way into adulthood. We are speaking to former Preemie Lauren Ingeldow, who started the Preemie Advocacy Network to get a first hand experience and a look into the future. This episode is not only for parents of preemies, but also medical professionals. Thank you so much for joining us, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
I'm so excited. And, I'm sure you know that I'm always interested in knowing what life is going to look like in a few years' time. So I'm very, very, very fortunate. And I think a lot of the other parents will be too, to have you here with us. So please take us back to the beginning. Tell us about yourself and how your premature journey started.
Okay, so I am 35 years old. I was born in 1988. I was born at 26 weeks gestation and weighing 430 grams. So I came into the world early because my mum had preeclampsia, which is where you have high blood pressure. And if this goes untreated, can lead to epileptic seizures. So I was lucky my mum had a screening which found that her blood pressure was extremely high. She was whisked into hospital and I was born by caesarean section a few hours later.
Oh my goodness. I can just imagine how scary that must have been for your mom. And we know that, preeclampsia is one of the leading causes of preterm birth. Um, so I'm glad that, you were very, very tiny as well when you were born. Oh my goodness, 400 grams.
Yes, yeah, 430 grams. But yes, I think
430,
possibly
yeah.
I was one of the smallest babies in the world at that time, I think.
I, I can believe that. I can believe that. I think still one of the smallest.
Yes, yeah, the record, I mean, they are being born earlier and smaller, but I think
Yes.
below 500 grams is still a bit of a thing, I think.
No, absolutely. So tell us, when you started school, how was your experience, and did you find being born prematurely affecting this from a remedial learning point of view?
Definitely. So I found starting school really difficult. I still am, I'm quite short and small. I'm quite lightweight. My fine motor skills, even at 35, I still struggle with these kinds of things. So starting school really highlighted the differences between me and my full-term peers in terms of the basic things like holding a pencil, learning my letters, sort of basic maths, social skills. I'm still quite introverted and quite shy, so I find making friends in busy environments quite difficult. Um, and my teachers really didn't understand that. They were of the belief that being born premature was equivalent to, so in the UK, our school system goes from September to August. So their belief was that I was like an August birthday. I was just the equivalent to being the youngest in the class, when really that wasn't the case.
Absolutely. And you say that your gross motor skills, weren't on par, and you still struggle with that now. Back then, did they offer things such as occupational therapy?
No, it really didn't exist at that time because I was very fortunate. I left NICU with no um, ongoing diagnoses or medical issues. I was discharged checked again at 2, discharged again. So there was nothing in my notes or from my GP to say that I might need intervention or help. So the belief really all the way through school was that I was a bit lazy, that I wasn't trying hard enough, all these sort of basic assumptions, which were more like character traits rather than genuine developmental issues.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's interesting. As preemie parents, I have heard too often that all preemies catch up by the age of 2. And I know that my experience and a lot of other parents, that just isn't true. We've also gone through, the earlier years where you don't have very many issues. And then once you get to school age, then they start to pick up issues. So you do have those preemies that while they're in hospital, it's up and down roller coaster. And you have those that, like in your case, end up getting discharged without many issues. But then these are then picked up later on in life. From your experience and from those of the people that you have in your network, how has that worked out for them? And obviously, I know that now things are a bit different and teachers are more privy to pick up such issues. But what has in the adult network the consensus been around this?
General, I can't speak for everyone, but general consensus is that most of
Hmm.
us have struggled with school, with lack of recognition, particularly around maths skills, though I think that is changing for the younger generations. Certainly for us, golden oldies, as I said, it was more put down to being lazy and they couldn't really understand. So, for example, I'm quite good at algebra and maths that is written down and that I can take the time to process, but I still need to do mental
Hmm.
arithmetic and my times tables on my fingers because my brain doesn't work that quickly. But from a teacher's perspective, that might look like, oh, you're just not trying hard enough or you're not concentrating.
Yeah.
It is a tricky one.
It really, really is. And it's such a big difference, hearing what you went through and seeing what we are going.
I really think prematurity should be included not only in healthcare education, but also teaching education curriculums, because at the moment it seems to be very hit and miss as to whether a teacher is aware that they may have pupils that are born prematurely, maybe because they've had prematurity in their family, or maybe they had a premature child themselves. But if it's completely outside of your experience, they may not be looking for it within their classroom.
That makes absolute sense. No, definitely. I've seen that. So tell me, why the need for something like an adult Preemie advocacy network?
Because I think, as we've said previously, many of us have our final assessments and we're discharged. Also for healthcare, we're not picked up by our primary care providers, and when we try and communicate that with them, quite often it's dismissed. It's very much, well, you've grown out of that now, or your birth won't impact you later in life, which we know isn't true. And from going from a very small group of 6 adults born prematurely who found each other online, having chats and realizing that we were experiencing the same thing, no matter where we were in the world, we all seem to be having this dismissive attitude from professionals and perhaps our families not quite understanding our struggles, and looking at the literature and looking around us and realizing that whilst a bit of research is being done, action wasn't being taken. So we thought, well, why don't we just have a go ourselves? So we created the network. It's growing in popularity and we're having more and more members join us, not only adults born preterm, but researchers and parents like yourself. So I feel like we're really growing a network that can advocate for the longer term impacts and that intervention is really needed. And we can all do that by raising awareness.
I absolutely love that, because it was actually one of the things that I did notice in the group was how medical conditions or symptoms were being ignored by physicians. And obviously, nobody is putting into use the fact that you were born prematurely, because again, like we said earlier, it seems to all stop at the age of 2, and it's like you've all of a sudden miraculously recovered from being born prematurely. And I actually came across something that for the first time in a long time made sense. And somebody said that prematurity is a chronic condition and should be treated as such. And I found that so revolutionary for me, because yes, we feel like our preemies should be monitored for their whole life based on the fact that they were born too soon, because we just, each case is different and we just don't know what the future holds for each preemie. How do you feel about that, about the terminology, and how would you like the medical community to assist adult preemies?
Absolutely. I believe prematurity should be considered a chronic condition. It's something I advocate for in all of my talks. And I think from the professional standpoint, it can look like, I suppose, in inverted commas, we're looking for problems. Actually, I feel that what we're doing by monitoring is we're giving the opportunity to find things early and intervene. So rather than waiting for someone's physical health or mental health to get to a point where they desperately need assistance, potentially we could pick that up much earlier on, so the impacts are not as extreme and people are able to um, continue to contribute to society in a functional way, and a way that they're able to cope with for a much longer period. So instead of having chronic conditions picked up in your mid to late 20s or early 30s, maybe there are signs perhaps in your teenage years that if we picked up on, instead of going into work at 18 and then perhaps and working full time and then needing to drop back to part time later on, perhaps we could be working full time for the duration of our careers. And that's really what we want. We just want to have any difficulties acknowledged and um, support in place so we can live full and happy lives and thrive, not just survive.
Absolutely. I hear that 100%, which actually, leads us to the next question. Like, if you would touch more on what is it like for preemies entering the job market? Because I always worry, like, we have support and stuff like that in the schooling years. Like I said earlier, things have changed drastically. There are schools that not necessarily cater for preemies, but obviously for the other issues that we're dealing with that comes with being born too soon. But then the minute you finish school, there's no guidance, there's no crutch, there's no, it's just like you get thrusted into the big bad world, and you need to now find a way to cope and to deal with that. So what would that look like for someone who was born prematurely that has ongoing issues? Do you have any other experiences to relate on that you have heard from in the network? And yeah, what can parents like myself expect?
It, it's difficult. So I think ignoring prematurity, we all find the workplace challenging at times.
Mm,
But for preemies, I think without diagnoses of neurodivergence, particularly
mhm.
neurodivergence, we say is the biggest one, is that you enter the world of work without that diagnosis, and perhaps working with a team and having a manager that doesn't understand that we on the surface might look like we're coping, but actually we do have executive function issues, multitasking issues, again with the maths, like mental arithmetic, so giving change if you're customer facing. We might be quite shy and introverted, so again that constant barrage of customer facing, answering the phone, we might find those really challenging. So when that comes to performance reviews at the end of the year, these may be things that they're being picked up on negatively rather than being
Yeah.
supported for. So that's something that's come up quite frequently within the network, and also sort of personal experience there. Before I started APAN with Juliet, I worked in sort of a very conventional job, and they were definitely things that were constantly being critiqued, I suppose, by my manager and
Hmm.
my team. It's just that, and that lack of understanding again, that it wasn't, these aren't willful acts to be difficult or laziness. They were genuine struggles that actually I could have really done with a bit of help with, or perhaps swapped tasks to things that were my strengths, and that they could pick up things that were their strengths, if you see what I mean.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just trying to think that, like, if you were to reveal these things, like, say, if you were being interviewed for a job, I feel like it would then prohibit you from getting the job. People are just very, in general, not open up to people who are differently abled or who have special needs or might be neurodivergent. So I don't know. How would you navigate that, or how would you suggest that you navigate that?
That's something I'm still trying to figure out myself, Tasmin. Um, I would I would suggest to interview being honest, because I
Hmm.
think that will then give you a sense of whether that person or that company is open to making adjustments. And if they're not, then that's quite a good sign that perhaps that isn't the right environment and place for you to be.
That makes sense. That's some good advice. We also earlier touched on a bit about relationships, but I'd like to go a bit more into it. Like, how has navigating friendships been, from younger years till now, and what about romantic relationships?
Okay, I'll start with friendships. So as I've said, I've always been quite introverted and shy. Um, and again, I think this is more a societal view and what we see on the media. This idea
Hmm.
that everyone needs to have loads and loads of friends, and they need to be out and about doing exciting things all of the time. And that never really suited me. I felt quite isolated when I was younger. And it took me a very long time to accept the fact that it's okay to have one or two or three very close
Hmm.
friends that I see individually or perhaps in small groups, and we have a much closer relationship rather than having lots of acquaintances, I suppose. And that's something I really wish schools would do in terms of social and personal development, is telling people that it is okay to just have a couple of friends and be quieter and prefer quieter hobbies. You don't need to be out every Friday night raving if you don't enjoy it.
No,
And
absolutely. That's so true. But I mean, even now, looking back in life, I wish someone had told me that. Because also, when you have this large group of people that you know, that you think are your friends, you come to find out that actually that's not always the case. So having one or two good close friends, I think, is the way to go anyway.
yeah, definitely agree. So,
Oh man.
relationships.
Hmm.
So the literature is very mixed in terms of whether preemies, one, we struggle with friendships, two, whether we have romantic relationships. Um, so some of the research says that we tend to stay single, whereas certainly with the network, I've learned that actually it's a little
Hmm.
bit more evenly split. And like the conventional world, it's a bit more about opportunity and just meeting the right person. So I have had romantic relationships going through, but nothing that really lasted um, until last year. So I've been with my partner for a year next week. And
Oh.
it's the easiest relationship I have ever had. So again, I get a bit nervous because I know what the literature says, but
Yes.
actually it genuinely is like for everybody. It's just finding the right person that you can be honest about your difficulties and share things with, and that they give you that support, and you can do that vice versa as well.
That warms my heart because we really do tend to get caught up in what the literature says, and we lean so much on what the literature is saying. And so to have, personal experiences makes it more tangible, should I say, because I look at my premier and he too is also somebody that doesn't do well in crowds, but he thrives in smaller groups. And so, yeah, it warms my heart to know that, there are the possibilities are endless and that he's not going to end up by himself. Everybody does find their person, but like you said, it just takes time and meeting the right person and being in the right setting. So I love that, and I love that for you, and congratulations. And yeah, maybe we'll hear wedding bells one of these days.
Maybe I might have to give you his details and you can give him a pod.
I don't mind, I'll be your hype girl.
And definitely, I just want to say there, just to kind of reiterate, I'm 35 years old. So it
Yeah.
might be that preemies, maybe we just take longer, just like with our
Mhm.
motor skills and everything else. It's just a matter of time and finding the right person, and not, and also whilst you are single, is try and accept that there is no, it's not a failure to be single and to be on your own.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of being comfortable with the situation that you're in and accepting that, but also being open to the fact that things might change when you least expect it.
Did you find yourself having to explain to your partner about your being born prematurely and what that has led up to where you are now?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So bless him, he's been on a bit of a learning curve, I think,
Oh, shame.
with the impacts. And again, you can't completely understand someone's
Mhm.
experiences because you haven't lived them. But by just being open and honest, it does leave the door leave the door open for conversations, and perhaps just an awareness that if I'm struggling with something, again, it's not deliberate, it's just the way I am.
No, absolutely. I get that. Do you find yourself having to explain that in all aspects of your life, or whenever you come into contact with different people who aren't aware of you being born early?
Oh, 100%. So the best one is my voice. So I've got vocal cord
Oh,
paralysis from being on the ventilator. But virtually every day, someone will ask me, "Oh, do you have a sore throat? Do you have COVID?" And virtually making the sign of the cross and wanting to run away in case I have
oh my
lungs.
goodness.
So yeah, I do. I do have to explain about my prematurity, um, and that gets tiring, I suppose. I just wish it was out there and the public were more aware, because with awareness, you then lead to more understanding and perhaps less questions. So I wonder if
Yes.
being born premature, sometimes we try to mask it, I think, because we want to fit in and we don't want to have to
Yes.
always answer these questions and repeat ourselves all the time, especially with medical professionals. So it's that thing again where when
Hmm.
prematurity isn't in your notes and you go to see your GP about your concerns, and you're having to regurgitate your story over and over again,
Yeah.
with quite often being, as we said earlier, dismissed, and oh, that won't impact you now, that doesn't have any
Hmm.
bearing on what you're through now. It's like slamming your head against a brick wall in the nicest possible way, but it just
Yeah.
gets
No, I can believe it. I mean, I feel tired as the parent having to advocate. So I can just imagine you being the person who's actually living it, having to every single day. explain your situation. I can just imagine it must be. I'm already fed up, so I can only imagine how fed up you are. And also sometimes when you're explaining these things, people look at you like you're so crazy or like you have given incorrect information. And sometimes you find yourself doubting yourself. And then when you're out of the situation and you think back, and then you're like, no, I was right with what I was saying. Why did the person make me doubt myself?
Definitely. And quite often, I don't know if you find the same thing, but you get to a point where you just start to clam up and you stop telling people
Yeah.
because you feel like even if I tell them, they're not going to believe me or they're going to kind of misunderstand what I mean. And that gets exhausting as well.
No, absolutely. I'm learning to pick and choose my battles. Sometimes it's not even worth it to try and explain something to somebody, and other times, actually, when you do it, it changes their perspective. But it really is on a person to person and case to case basis.
Definitely. And I have so much admiration for you and all the other parents listening because as a parent, you have lived through this experience of giving birth early. You know your baby or your child best. And to be up against these barriers all the time must be so frustrating, just unbelievably frustrating. So I admire everyone's courage and fortitude to just keep going and advocating for their child. It's amazing and we do appreciate it. We really do.
Oh, oh, thank you. It actually means a lot to hear it from the other side because sometimes you do doubt yourself. You don't know if you are doing the right thing or the best thing. You're just following your instinct. And I think also what's very sad is that because we trust that the medical community is more informed than what we are, we tend to go with what they are saying instead of trusting our own instincts. And it's something that I always tell my parents that, like, anybody can read a book and learn up on a condition, but you are the person that knows your child the best. So regardless of what the experts are saying, if you feel like something is wrong or you have questions and concerns, pursue it until you get the answers that you need.
Definitely. And if anyone needs any help with research papers or literature or evidence, then please always come and send us an email because we will be happy to help you put your case forward and give you that little bit of backing and support.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Because, yes, it is actually very hard to get the research as just a normal average person out there on the street.
Definitely. I'm very guilty of emailing researchers and saying, please can I have full access to your paper because I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested, but it's behind a paywall and I can't afford $30 for 24-hour access to an article. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have found that as well. So I suppose we are much fortunate than the average person in this work that we do that we have more access, but it shouldn't be like that. It should be easily and readily available for people that need it.
Definitely. So I'm always an advocate. If you find an open access article that anyone can read, share it because it's there in the domain. And having things in one place is so much quicker and easier than having to Google everything. Because Googling takes
Absolutely.
hours and you have to know what to look for, and that's not always easy. They're hidden behind complex medical terminology that the
Absolutely.
average person wouldn't understand. So
No,
definitely
that's
share all the
true.
information you can find.
Thank you so much for that. And while you're on that portion, let the listeners know how they can reach out to you. Where can they find you?
So we are on Facebook. We are the Adult Preemie Advocacy Network. You can follow us on Twitter. We're at Adult Preemies. And we have an email address, which is adultpreemies@gmail.com.
That is so awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you. I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have plenty more in the future. But I think for now, we'll leave it where it is. I think we've given our parents a good glimpse into the future. And if they have any questions, I'm sure they will reach out to us.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for having me again, Tasmin. I love our chats. They're always wonderful.
Thank you. And with that, I am your host, Tasmin Bota, and you've been listening to the Life, Love, Everything podcast.